Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League is a recently released game based on a DC villain team and a live service game model. Essentially, a game that adds content regularly to keep players interested and satisfied while trying to milk them for whatever they can get. I'm KL, and this is an analysis on Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League in relation to ship to the live service model. So, when we think of a live service model game, we think of World of Warcraft, Destiny 2, Overwatch 2, and Fortnite. However, what is it that makes these games live service? Well, it needs a base game with an endlessly replayable game loop. And then, to make it live service, which is a continuation of its life, it needs regular updates to bring in either new stories or gameplay elements. A live service model should honestly be the ideal way to deliver a product from Marvel or DC studios, because it just fits in with the worlds that they create with their stories and characters. So why did something like Marvel Avengers fail? And why is it that Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League is already dead at launch? Is it the fault of live service? When it comes to live service types of games, there are two avenues to go with. One being PvE, and the other being PvP. PvP meaning player versus player. This is something that Overwatch and Fortnite have. That they are, right? These types of games created an endlessly replayable loop by having it be in a competitive landscape, and they created a solid base game to play as you verse other players in an open area fighting over an objective. Now, while there were a limit to the number of maps, locations, characters, and objectives, the PvP style allowed for every game to feel unique, as every match was essentially you versus a different player. And people love to be competitive, right? Humanity has been competitive for thousands and thousands of years. That's why humans love playing sports and games, because of the competitive aspect. And that's all that these games needed to be. Just, even though you're killing each other, right? And it's the same thing over and over. Well, because of the competitiveness, it just creates an endlessly replayable loop of fun. So that's why they stay that way and have such a longevity, because they don't need more content to be added to satisfy a player. The player is the satisfaction to other players, right? But for Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League and Marvel Avengers, that is a PvE game. A PvE, or player versus environment, which is NPCs, relies on the content in the game to survive, unlike PvP relying on competition. Having interesting and diverse enemies, challenging bosses, as well as fun characters to play is essentially the bare minimum for a PvE game to be good. A live service PvE game lives and dies by the amount of content in the game, which is where the main problem, the Suicide Squad and Marvel Avengers, comes into focus. Both games have had lackluster content in them. Suicide Squad has one of the worst enemy varieties I have seen in a game. It feels like there is 3 to 5 different enemies that you fight throughout the whole campaign and like the playable missions, and they don't do anything special to give you variety in gameplay. You just shoot them a couple times and you're done. I mean, Marvel Avengers had only 2 boss villains to fight in the live service game modes, and they didn't add any new bosses or content for months on end. And this is not acceptable at launch. How the hell do you think people feel when they are doing the same thing over and over again with the same enemies, gameplays, and villains, right? It gets so uninterested. I mean, in Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, there are a shit ton of escort missions that are so tedious and boring to do over and over again. Everyone knows variety is the spice of life. We want variety in our games. A real live service game needs multiple factions of enemies, over 10 boss fights, as well as interesting characters to play. While I don't have anything to say about the characters gameplay-wise, I can say that it means nothing unless there's something interesting for them to do. The lack of content diversity sits the player with about 2 to 3 hours. This is being generous, in fact, before the process in the game becomes mind-numbingly tedious. Every game has this lifespan to it where it will run out of fun things to do or new things to explore. And 2 to 3 hours for a live service game that people are meant to spend hundreds of hours on is nowhere near enough. It's my opinion that live service games aren't the problem. In fact, it should fit perfectly with the DC and Marvel formula, like I said before. Their way of storytelling, where you add new stories and new characters to this world, it fits in perfectly with the idea of a live service game, right? The problem is games that these companies make, right? The product that they're making and publishing. Or to say, it's the lack of content they put in the game and the variety in which it is delivered. Now, I hope people don't start believing that live service games are the problem. I don't want people thinking the next live service game that's announced is immediately going to be shit. But unfortunately, this will be the outcome that Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League has solidified. That being said, the one who poured the concrete was in fact Marvel Avengers. Oh, and just to cover my ass here, I know that most live service games have very predatory monetization, and that is also a factor that people hate, as well as people just wanted a single player Rocksteady game like the Arkham Knight trilogy, and just all the, like, Rocksteady make great single player games. I understand these factors, but that's not what this video is about. Because honestly, people wouldn't have a problem with this game if the game was good from the get-go. So you just gotta make a good game, I guess. Well, I mean, I would still complain about the microtransactions, but you get my point. Suicide Squad didn't kill the Justice League. Suicide Squad killed the live service model. Thanks for watching. KL has delivered his message. Please subscribe and like.